Welcome, everyone. So, as many of you know, NCLS was founded in 1959 by 5 local Newton families, along with 7 students. The parents from those families volunteered to teach their students both Chinese language and Chinese culture. They try to enrich their students with a sense of their shared heritage. After 58 years, we have expanded our goal of enriching young minds by offering a rich and a diverse curriculum ranging from the arts to the science. Today, our school is made of over 500 families, which means we have grown 100 times from our original size. So this makes us the largest Chinese school and one of the largest volunteering organizations in the New England area. But none of these accomplishments could have been achieved without the strong and consistent support from the city of Newton and its residents. As such, we have made it one of our primary goals to give back to the Newton community. In these recent years, NCLS has become even more involved in the Newton community life through our annual participation in the World Culture Festivals and the Newton Serves Spring Cleaning events, along with hosting the Chinese New Year events in Newton City Hall. So today's events mark another milestone in our school's efforts to give back to the community. I hope you all will enjoy today's lively and inspiring discussion that will spark new ideas to benefit our community. So on behalf of our school, I want to thank everyone in the audience for coming, and I want to thank the Mayoral candidates and the school committee candidates for sharing their vision about the future of Newton. Before we continue, I also want to thank all of our wonderful and passionate volunteers who helped make today's event possible. Now, without any further ado, let us welcome today's moderator, the principal of Newton Chinese Language School, Mr. Ben Xia.
Thank you for coming. And it's a beautiful Sunday, right? Yes. So we are very delighted to have both mayoral candidates to join us in the forum. And we would also like to give the welcome to our 9 school committee members. So we'll be having Ward 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8, a total of 5 wards. Will be here today at our school too. So I would like to also thank you, Jason Cho, board member of Newton Cantonese School and the president of Newton Cantonese School, to help us to form this forum. Today's forum is composed of 3 portions. We will start with the mayoral candidates panel in a minute. And at 3 o'clock, a short ceremony of President's Volunteer Service Award will be held here. We will invite all the candidates hand the certificate to our award-winning students. It will be a warm and encouraging moment. At 3:30, we will start with the school committee candidates panel. For both panels, a Q&A session will follow the candidates' statements. Now, let's get started with the mayoral candidates panel. Again, it's our great pleasure to have both Ruthanne Fuller and Scott Lennon in the panel. Welcome to our school. Ruthanne currently serves as Ward 7 Councilor at Large, and Scott currently serves as Ward 1 Councilor at Large, and the City Council President. They have stood out of 7 candidates and are here today to communicate with Newton Chinese community. Now, let me explain the format of this debate panel. We will start the opening statement from each candidate. So each of you will have 10 minutes. And we will give a little warning alert when time's up. All right. So for Q&A session, we will be using as many questions as time allows. So each candidate can respond to the question with a limit of 2 minutes. So we encourage audience who would like to ask questions to stand in front of the stand-up microphones, so we know you have questions to ask. Okay, so let's start with the opening statement. So I would like to ask 2 candidates who would like to start first.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Newton Chinese Language School for offering me an opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon about my candidacy for mayor. I really, really appreciate it. And it's fantastic to be back in my old junior high school. Right here at the junior high school where I went. I remember our 8th grade last day sitting right over in that corner getting our annual awards. And I can remember that very vividly, so I really appreciate this opportunity. For those of you that I didn't have an opportunity to meet on the way in, my name is Scott Lennon. I am a candidate for the mayor of the city of Newton. I am a lifelong resident of Newton, a 3rd generation Newtonian. I am married to my wife, Wendy, and I have a beautiful little girl, Jenna, who is in the 1st grade at the Lincoln Elliott School, where I also went to school. And Jenna will be the 4th generation of my family to graduate from the Newton Public Schools. My grandfather, who is 102 years old, just turned 102 in June, was the first in our family to graduate Newton High School in 1935. My parents, who are both still here in the house that they bought in 1972, were graduates in 1961. I was class of 1988 Newton North High School, and I'm proud to say that my little girl will be the class of 2029. Really proud of that. My dad, he was a firefighter here in the city for almost 30 years. And my mom, for those of you that are familiar with Newton, my mom was the cashier at Fox Pharmacy on Watertown Street. I used to stop in there every afternoon and see her on my way home from Day Junior High, going to the Boys and Girls Club on Dalby Street, where I grew up every day after school. And my parents always instilled in me and in my sister about community service and giving back. And that was so very important to our family. So when I was finished being a member at the Boys and Girls Club, I became a member of their board of directors at the age of 25. And at that time, we were working to have the new site that they have right now on Watertown Street that was an old city site. And I was going to City Hall. And I was figuring out how I was going to help the Boys and Girls Club acquire that site, and that's when it clicked. That's when I figured out how I wanted to continue to give back to my community. And it was running for local office. And I did. So in 1997, I ran for local office. I was unsuccessful, but I stayed engaged in this community that meant so much to me. I got involved in different boards and commissions. I served as treasurer of the Newton Schools Foundation. I got involved in my ward Democratic Committee, staying involved in our community. And after that, I ran again for office in 2001. and I'm proud to say that I am about to finish my 16th year on the City Council. 8 of those years, I served as the president of the council. I've been elected by my colleagues on the City Council 4 times to serve as president, 3 times unopposed, which means everyone else that's in the race has voted for me to be president of the City Council because they have the trust and the confidence in my ability to manage and to lead and to collaborate and to bring people of different viewpoints together and work the complex issues of city government through the City Council. And I'm very, very proud of that. I'm also very proud of a couple things that I've been able to do on the City Council. First, as president, really changed the tone and the tenor of city government, working collegially, working together to solve complex problems with the school committee, with the executive office. That is something I take great pride in. Also, as a counselor, one of the things I'm really, really proud of is being able to renovate the city's firehouses. My dad, as I mentioned, was a firefighter in the city for almost 30 years. And going through those buildings, I saw in what deplorable condition that they were in. So I was able to, in my capacity as a counselor, work with our city council to develop a strategic plan in order to renovate those firehouses, to work with the executive office to develop a financing plan. And after being told for so many years that we wouldn't get those done, I'm proud to say we're about to finish our 4th station and we have 2 more to go. Professionally, I work in state government. After graduating from Merrimack College in 1992, I graduated from Merrimack with a degree in finance. I went to work at a couple of different jobs, getting experience in a number of different fields. I worked in private accounting, doing financial auditing. I worked for a company working as their accounts payable manager for a company that had no money. So as you can imagine how difficult that was, trying to work and negotiate with vendors. But then I had an opportunity to come and work for state government. And I've been working in state government for over 20 years, ensuring each day that taxpayer funds are spent efficiently and effectively. I spent 14 years working in the state auditor's office doing audits of state agencies, ensuring that the money that the taxpayers' funds that they had was spent efficiently and effectively and for its intended purpose. And 6 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be part of the transition team of the Middlesex Sheriff's Office. I currently am at the Sheriff's Office right now. I manage a $70 million budget on a day-to-day basis. I have 9 direct reports, and I am responsible for the day-to-day financial operation, of that agency, working, accounting, purchasing, contracts, branch management, statistician, inventory control, the type of hands-on, day-to-day public sector finance experience that is needed in the corner office. I bring that experience to City Hall. I work with budgets, work with staff, responsible for outcomes, responsible for doing that on a day-to-day basis. That is something that I do every day that I'm extremely proud of. And why am I running for mayor? I'm running for mayor because this city has provided me and provided my family with every opportunity to succeed. From education to employment to wonderful community life and great city services, I want to ensure that every resident and every family in this city has the same opportunities to succeed that my family has. I have been living in the city all of my 47 years. I've spent 16 years on the city council giving back to a community that has given me and given my family so much. And I want to ensure that I am doing that as mayor for every resident and every family in this city. That's why I'm running for mayor. And what are some of the areas of concentration that I'm thinking about as your mayor? Well, overall, my overall vision for government is to ensure that with proper planning and thoughtful conversations with all stakeholders in our city, that we have a responsive, interactive, transparent, and sustainable government that will continue to improve our quality of life while remaining a welcoming, diverse, and open community for all. And what are some of the areas that I'm thinking about as your mayor? And I say areas because I believe that priorities should be developed together. We should work together on priorities. So I like to say areas of concentration. First for me is education. First is education. Education is the reason why people come to Newton. It's the reason why people stay in Newton. It's the reason why our property values remain strong. And I want to ensure as your mayor that we have an educational system that continues to challenge and prepare our kids for life beyond Newton. The world is coming at them very quickly nowadays. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I want to make sure that I am a strong part of the system that she grows up in. And I'm deeply proud to have the endorsement of all of the Teachers Association here in the Newton Public Schools, because they understand that you need someone who has to have that management and that leadership and that professional experience, and have someone who is a product of the schools, and have someone who has a child in the system to look at it from the perspective of someone who's in that system now. As mayor, we'll be responsible for the city's allocation to ensure that our system remains strong. So to me, public education in the Newton Public Schools is very personal to me, and that's the top priority that I'm going to have as your mayor. What are some of the other areas? How much more time do I have? 10 seconds. Financial, now you know it'll be 10 seconds. Financial management, quality of life city services, investing in our infrastructure, development, housing, and communication. I'm sure we'll talk more about it as it goes along. Thank you, folks.
Hello everybody, I'm Ruthanne Fuller and I'm running for mayor, and I'm so grateful to the Newton Chinese Language School as well as to the Cantonese School as well for welcoming us here today. And I have every confidence in Newton's future, but doesn't this feel like an unsettled time right now? So that it's particularly important to have a mayor that has a clear vision, clear values, and a clear plan for the future. To me, that plan has 4 essential elements: to make sure we have the best schools in Massachusetts, to make Newton more livable, and I'll tell you what I mean by that, to make sure we have a plan to preserve our great neighborhoods and improve our village centers, and a plan for our finances so we can pay for everything. Before I dig into that, let me just tell you a little bit more about myself and how I ended up on this stage today. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, in a very close-knit family, with my 2 older brothers. But the defining event in my childhood were the riots in Detroit in 1967. So I was 10 years old. I'm going to let you pause and figure out how old I am. And just to put it in perspective, 43 people were killed in those riots. And after that, both my parents got even more deeply involved in the life of the city, working with many others to try to bring the city back together again. And today, when the mayor of Detroit gives out the annual Community Service Award, it's the Alan E. Schwartz Award, and that's my dad. So I'm sure that's why I'm here with you today. I moved east, first to go to Brown University, later Harvard Business School. After business school, I first worked in the business world as a management consultant. Let me give you an example of what that means. Volvo North America found that their customer service ratings in their service department were plummeting. I led the team to turn that around. That meant figuring out the technology to use, the supply chain, the customer interface. That's what I did. But then I switched over and I became the first strategic planner at Channel 2 WGBH. I was there for 8 years in a period where government funding was really declining. And at the same time, the whole technology world was changing around us. And WGBH, as you may know, is a really successful organization. It was about that time that Joe, my husband, and I moved here to Newton about 25 years ago with our identical twin sons who are now 29 and our younger boy 26. He's now 26 and married, and I'm still getting used to the idea that I have a daughter-in-law. And that was when I started getting involved with the life of the city here in Newton. We live in Chestnut Hill. We're sandwiched between all the development on Route 9 and Boston College. For 6 years, I was president of our neighborhood association, working to make sure our neighborhood stayed strong and wonderful, even with all that was going around us. After that, you may remember Mayor David Cohn. I was appointed to be vice chair of something called the Citizen Advisory Committee. Do you remember 2007, 2008, when the financial world collapsed around us? We were facing a structural deficit here in Newton. And what we did was look at our operating efficiencies, our revenue sources, and come up with a financial plan to make sure we could stay strong and balance what was then a $260 million budget. And you know what? Seti Warren used our recommendations as his blueprint. Because of the work of the Citizen Advisory Group, I got to know people all over Newton, got passionate about the issues, and ran successfully for the Board of Aldermen. We're now city councilors. And on the city council, I'm proud of the work I've done. Some of it is in the financial area, and you should know this about me. I'm not afraid to tackle a complex problem, even if it means confronting an inconvenient truth. So 3 years ago, I gathered a team of experts, all Newton residents, and raised my hand and wrote the 80-page white paper on the $1 billion, that's a B, not an M, the $1 billion that we owe our retirees but have not yet funded. I also realized, I'm vice chair of the Finance Committee, that we hadn't been doing our auditing work correctly. I wrote the ordinance for the audit committee and I've chaired it ever since. I also realized that we didn't have any financial management guidelines. They hadn't been updated in decades. With the comptroller and the CFO, I wrote those financial management guidelines. But I've also been involved in some of this unglamorous nitty-gritty work. With another city councilor, Deb Crossley, we spent 5 years with the Department of Utilities writing the first ever strategic investment plans, first for sewer, then for water, and then for stormwater. I'm seeing your eyes glaze over. It's actually really interesting work. I've also been the only city councilor to serve on the Ainger, Service, and Cabot school building committees. So there are children here in Newton right now who are benefiting from the work that we did with the school committee, the city council, the mayor's office. And yes, those projects came in on time and on budget, but you know what's more important? They are buildings that work for the students and for the teachers and fit in with the residential neighborhoods. I know how to get buildings built that work here in Newton. So yes, we've done a lot. There is still so much to do and so much at stake. That's why I'm running for mayor. I am passionate about making this city work for our children, our families, our working families, those who want to move here, and those who are living and retiring here. We're going to spend a lot of time on individual questions here, but know that my priorities are our schools, our seniors, making transportation and traffic work, making it safe to bike and walk, making sure that our residential neighborhoods stay warm and livable and vibrant, and that our village centers, they need to improve, and we need to have some more affordable housing options for everyone. So that's what I'm all about, but let me add the final thing. What do I value most of all? I want to make sure that everybody in Newton has a voice, no matter where you live, where you grew up, or what language you speak in your home. I want to make sure that we respect everyone with different backgrounds and different opinions, and that I hear you in City Hall. I've been knocking on doors for literally months, been in all 32 precincts multiple times. People keep saying, I want to be heard. And finally, the last value. I am committed to make sure that Newton's core principles, that we are welcoming, inclusive, and diverse, that we are living those every day. So thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting us. And I do have to say, I asked for your vote on November 7th, which I think is only 24 days away. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, for your wonderful and informative speech. And now it's our time for taking questions from the audience. So if you have questions, you can come up to the microphone stand. And I'm going to start my first question. And I would like to ask those other candidates. This year, Newton Public School faces $2 million deficit as a result. So Newton Public School has to cut some language and arts program. So several users of public school buildings, including us, are facing increased rent in the next 4 to 5 years. So do you have any plan to support Newton Public School's deficit?
So thank you for the question. Just let me make sure that I understand. It was funding, making sure we have the funding?
Yes.
Thank you. So that's my job as mayor, to make sure that we are a financially strong city and that we have the funding that we need, certainly for our schools, but whether it's for public safety and all of our libraries, our roads. That's my job, and I've had 30 years of experience with finances to be able to do that. And you're right, Ben. You notice that 26 positions were eliminated for this school year. There's a term called a canary in a coal mine. That means we should be paying attention to that. Alarm bells should be going out. So my plan as mayor is to make sure we are a financially sound city, that we grow our revenues, particularly commercial office retail. There's a lot of opportunities there. That we manage our expense side. Yes, those words being efficient and effective are true, but what I want to particularly focus on is the use of technology. We are so far behind the private sector in making us productive. So that's an area I want to start focusing on. I will tell you though, I'm going to be I'm going to talk straight with you. We are going to have to prioritize. We have so much to do on the capital infrastructure side that we're going to have to set a plan out and be very clear what we're investing in and when. I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate the question. So, that's it. No, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think one of the things that I bring to the mayor's office, as I mentioned, is having that hands-on, day-to-day experience dealing with a budget, being responsible for a budget, being responsible for outcomes, always being able or trying to be able to do more with what you have. Planning obviously goes a long way with that. Yes, we had some one-time expenses this year that did cause us to have a deficit in terms of positions being cut or rents being increased or things like that. That is something where I feel that I can be most effective in looking at our budget, our entire city budget on a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year basis, looking out, knowing what our needs will be on the city side and on the school side, working extremely collaboratively with the superintendent, the school committee, and all the way up and down our school system to ensure that we have the resources, as I mentioned, to challenge and prepare our children for life beyond Newton. That is really important. How will I look to do that? There are a variety of things. You can always look to be efficient and look for economies throughout your budget. A real true budget professional will do that. There are a couple of things that we could look at operationally on both the city and the school side and possibly combine some of those. It will take conversation with the school committee, and I'm not afraid of having tough conversations. The other thing that I think that we need to be doing is looking at generating more revenue here in the city and dedicating that to our schools. I intend on making sure that I go to speak to the institutions of higher education here in our city and talking to them about what they're doing in terms of payments in lieu of taxes and how they can work with our community on dedicating some of those towards education in areas that are so important. So, as I mentioned earlier, education will be a focus, and I have that experience to work on that budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone has a question to ask?
Well, thank you so much, and I think both candidates are just wonderful candidates, and the speeches are very robust and powerful. My question is for each of you. Can you comment on the other candidate? If the other candidate is elected, what are 2 things that you might see happening in Newton? And then in contrast, if you are elected, what are the 2 things that might we, as residents, will see happening in Newton?
So that's a tough question. Because what you're saying is you're hoping that I'm going to answer this based on her getting elected, and I don't want that to happen. And I say that with all due respect. We are great friends. We've had a tremendous opportunity over the last year working together. But if Councilor Fuller is elected mayor, one of the things I hope that she could work with me on, and we could talk together about, is education, because I think that that's vitally important. Ensuring that our city remains affordable for everybody here in the city. There are a lot of folks who are struggling to make ends meet, who still want to be able to take advantage of a great community and great community life, and talk about how we can keep Newton affordable for everybody. So education would be something I'm hoping that we can talk about and work on together. Affordability is something that I'm hoping we would talk and work on together. And I really think, as I tried to mention in my my opening statement, it is that communication. And how do you bring more people into our community in terms of having them involved in city government? I think that that's really important. I believe I have some ideas on how to do that, and being out in the community and using technology, and I know that Councilor Fuller does too. And if I'm elected mayor, I'm hoping that we can work together on some things that are important to her. But overall, I think what we're both trying to do is make Newton one of the greatest places to live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I know that if she is elected, or if I'm elected, we still will work collaboratively, because you constantly need to set a tone here in city government of being collaborative, working together, being respectful of differences, and I know that we will do that together. So thank you for the question.
I have great affection and respect for Scott Lennon, and if he is mayor, I will certainly continue to be involved in the life of this good city, but I'm planning on winning. Fingers crossed. And I think what I'd like to do is talk about how, yes, both of us would work to make the schools the best in the United States. I'm not afraid to say that that's my goal. It's amazing that here in Newton, we have one high school ranked, I think, 15th, and the other 33rd. By most standards, that you would say that's exceptional. But we should keep aiming high. And I'm looking at Ann Larner, who used to be chair of the school committee, because she taught me something right from the beginning when I was thinking about schools here in Newton. What we want to do is simultaneously have each student reach their full potential and be in a supportive environment so that those kids who are really high achievers, hardworking, focused on academics, they can grow. But those kids who have special challenges, like one of my sons who has severe dyslexia, that they also flourish in this school. And yes, we have to do it in a period where there are budget challenges. But as mayor, schools will be my #1 priority. And the most important decision that the mayor makes each year is the allocation of the budget to the school committee. You can count on my support. This is the moral driver of this city and the economic driver. I'm completely committed to the schools.
Thank you.
Great answers. Thank you for both. Okay. And please announce your name and which party or which school you are coming from. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yong Chi-Lim. I'm a Newton resident, and also I used to be the principal of this school and also board chair of this school. Thank you very much for coming this afternoon to support our community. So my question here is about the Newton development. Obviously, Newton has a quite ambitious plan to develop more property, including the affordable housing. So for example, we have the Washington Place, which is over 100 units, and also at the Newton Street is close to 1,000 units. And also the Riverside is also almost 400 units being built up. I'm wondering, we know we bring more people here. Obviously, that will bring more kids here, and they will need a school. And also they need the street and for the traffic, for the transportation. So I'm wondering, during the expansion of Newton for the development, what is your approach to address some other issues coming with this development?
The question is, does Newton want to grow, and if so, how do we do it? Sustainable and sequenced. Why do we want to grow at all? Well, you know what? It's happening anyway, so let's take charge of Newton's future. Let's map out what we want to be and do it in a smart way. One of the big issues is that Newton is becoming increasingly unaffordable. For those who are already here, for seniors who are trying to stay here, or for some working families who would like to move here. But we've got to do it in a smart, sequenced way, so that if we grow, and I think we should a bit, this is modest growth, to put it in perspective, we need to do it near mass transit in a way where if we add apartments and people, they're helping our village centers so that a place like Newtonville stays in business, so that people are walking rather than exclusively using cars, so that they have access to the mass transit and the Green Line in particular. But you know what? We have to do it in a sequenced way. because we need to make sure that if we grow, we have seats in the schools and teachers in the classrooms so that we can educate those people who come here. So commercial, retail, growth, which brings in the tax dollars, often has to be a little bit ahead of the housing, but you want the housing to grow here so that we can be an affordable, inclusive, diverse city.
Newton stores will always be open. I think that that's very important, and we will continue to grow, and that's healthy for our city. As I said at the outset, what I think is very, very important is to do proactive planning and work with residents and businesses throughout our village centers and throughout our community. We have been guilty of being reactive all the time, not working proactively with a vision to see where development should go or not, or limit it, and how it should work, and how it will affect city services, and how it will affect schools. So I am committed to that proactive planning and putting people at the table as we continue to look out to see where we should be doing this. If you look at the projects that you specifically talked about, Washington Place, Riverside, I think you mentioned. And we have a few projects that are coming online. The Northland group is looking at Needham Street pretty proactively, and I'm glad that they're working with the city. But it's how do we work with them? How do we work with our school community to understand how that will affect them? When you look at Washington Place and Austin Street, we did look at the number of school-age children that will come into our system. And it is sustainable. But if you have larger projects that are being discussed in business corridors, that are in certain parts of the city, we need to sit down ahead of time and talk about how that will impact the city. And then work with those petitioners or developers on how that works to understand how we can make it work for them, but how we can make it work for the city. If you have a significant development like in Northland, that could impact our school system. And looking at the makeup of bedrooms and commercial and retail. It's the proactive planning that I think will help us as we move forward here in this city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Hello. Hi. My name is John Zhao. I'm a long-term Newton resident. Actually, I live in Lennon. I believe that's a staff neighborhood. Welcome both to the school. My question is on the revenue growth rather than the budget. I noticed that on your website, Ruthanne, you mentioned that I will encourage appropriate revenue growth on the commercial tax base. Can you elaborate on that? So what is your definition of appropriate revenue growth? Thank you.
Well, I did look to see what was on Ruthanne's website. I have. Okay, just to be really clear about that. But I know you sort of directed the question. I heard, but we're taking turns going first, so I'll go first. So I do think that we need to, again, if you're going back to proactively looking at what we're doing here in the city, it is where we are doing our projects. Where can we sustain, have sustainable growth in terms of mixed-use projects that would be commercial with housing above? One of the challenges we do have in being a well-built-out city is looking at where we can have more commercial development, and then what costs come with that. How are we doing it? Are you doing it in areas that aren't around transit? Are you working with developers who we are trying to say to them, how are you getting your employees from not driving to work? Are we working with them in terms of transportation demand management? Are we looking at where commercial can go in our city? And are we talking regionally with other communities around us about getting people out of their cars and having them get there? So I believe you have to proactively plan and do it correctly. In terms of the generation of more revenue, of course, we need to look to strengthen our commercial base in where and how we do it. But I also think we do need to get a little creative with regard to our financial procedures here in the city. And if residents are paying bills or how that works, are we getting that money into our system quick enough, and are we generating the interest income from that? Are we looking to further our pilots? Are we looking at cellular companies who are we're permitting to put their equipment on our city poles? Are we charging the right fees? There are a variety of things that we can look at as a city to generate revenue, and I hope to do that as your mayor.
Thank you.
You're asking a very important question. For us, for the city of Newton, do you know we have no master plans right now for any of our commercial corridors or our village centers? We need to, I'm going to use that same word, proactively plan not only where businesses go, but how much and what kind. Particularly here in Newton, we have an exciting opportunity to look at the STEM world, technology, biosciences, and also the entrepreneurs of the world. We have a terrific partner in the Chamber of Commerce, but we in the city of Newton actually have to step up with our economic development planning. We have to do that as well as the master planning. And there's another part of this. All of you know what zoning is and zoning ordinances. We have to have the vision of what we want and proactively change the zoning, because right now, many businesses say they don't want to come here to Newton because it's so hard to get through the permitting process. I'm going to tell you about one example of our failure to do that. TripAdvisor used to be here in Newton. I am convinced that had we proactively planned on Needham Street at the end where the Marshall's Plaza is, it would have been a great location for them. We could have had them right here in Newton. There are shuttles that run up and down that street that don't stop to pick up any of the passengers in Newton. Could have been picking up people right along Needham Street. And that's the type of proactive planning I'm planning to do as mayor of Newton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Riley. I'm a resident in Newton since 2003. I was involved with the culture activity in Newton. I was on the advisory board of Newton Community Pride and a member of the Newton Police Chief Search Committee. We are fortunate to have two experienced, competent leaders as candidates. I know you two are good friends and you take similar or same position on many issues. So we're trying to find out the differences between the two of you. Would you each please tell us your management weakness and maybe one thing or two that the mistake you have made or wish you had done things differently in the past 5 or 10 years?
So let me talk a little bit about who I am, and this is a good man, so this is not between good and evil in this election. So let me just put it this way, this is good man. But I'll talk about two things. Background. After Harvard Business School, I first worked in the business world, then in the nonprofit sector, and now here in city government. Before moving to Newton 25 years ago, I was on Brookline's finance committee and headed up their strategic planning committee. So I've got a broad range of experience to bring here. And I've got not just finance experience, I'm a strategic planner. I know how to plan, to put things into action, and get things done. That's my background. Let me also just tell you about a couple of votes where Scott and I differed. A few years ago, we had to hire a new police chief. It came to the city council. Do you only want to look at internal candidates, Or should you look at external candidates as well as your internal candidates? I knew that if we wanted to even have a chance of thinking of looking at a woman as a police chief, an Asian as a police chief, a black person as a police chief, we had to look externally as well as internally. So I voted yes for the external search. Scott chose otherwise. I'll give you another example of a vote that was different. The board of the library trustees came to us. They wanted to put solar carports at the library and over the parking lot. I voted yes. Scott voted no. So there's a little bit of differences. Thank you.
I also have the same deep amount of respect for my colleagues, so we've had a great time working together over the course of the last 10 months. But I really want to address that question that was asked about managerial weakness. Well, I think you need to have managerial experience to have strength or weakness. And that's something that I bring to this position. Over 20 years of hands-on, day-to-day, professional public sector finance experience. Someone who works with a staff day in and day out, who is currently on unpaid leave from work to campaign for this job full-time. So that is where I believe my experience in terms of working in city government for 16 years with department heads all the way down through staff, as someone who rolls up his sleeves and takes the plans that we have in our city right now, our transportation strategy, our roads plan, our long-term liabilities plan that we do have here in our city. Not a white paper that's been developed without strong recommendations or recommendations at all. We have a plan to address that. So in terms of votes that may have been taken with regard to differences, that's all fine and well. I'm sure we could both explain our positions if we needed to. I didn't hear the last part of the question, but I wanted to be clear about there is a difference in this race with regard to real, hands-on, professional experience. Planning is important. It is important. Strategic planning is important. You need someone who is going to take those plans and implement them here in the city of Newton. That's the experience that I bring. Thank you.
Next question yet?
Yes, please.
So this one is going to be a quick trivia question. Whoever gets the answer right, yell out the answer, will get my vote. Tell me which movie this quote comes from. If Nick has 1 goat and Maria has 9, how soon will they marry?
Say it one more time.
If Nick has 1 goat and Maria has 9, how soon will they marry? It's unfair for 2 candidates with Irish last names. My big fat Greek wedding. And when the children talk about what they learn at Greek school, right? And it's almost what we teach here in Chinese school too, except we teach much better math. And so Newton Chinese Language School is almost a misnomer. And because we teach so much more than just Chinese language here, and we teach a whole lot wider student body than just second-generation Chinese children. And so from a teacher's body standpoint, we have many teachers with advanced degrees, master's, PhDs, and they are making not much more than a cashier at McDonald's from an hourly standpoint. And because they are here, and their sole purpose is to educate the second generation, right? And from a teacher body, student body standpoint, we have students from all over, mostly from Newton, but many children from other communities as well. And we have children of all kinds of hair color, all kinds of eye colors. And it's as a phenomenon that you probably are aware of, that Chinese education is really catching on steam here, because the amount of trade that happened between China and the US, and many parents realize it is a great skill for their children to have, to learn Chinese as a language, as a second language. So in many ways, Newton Chinese Language School, we see ourselves as an extension of the public school here in Newton. And because our students here learn not only Chinese, but also math, biology, and chemistry, and all the advanced topics that prepare them for better citizens. And we have more than 1,000 families here call this school our school on Sunday afternoon. And so my question to your candidates is, probably I can speak for a lot of parents here, is what would you do to support this community that has a 50-year-old long history, that takes on the task of educating so many children? Thank you.
I probably should have just taken the jacket off. But, so thank you for the question. And again, one of the strengths that I believe I bring to not only being a counselor, but as president of the council in my professional career, is the strength of collaboration. I think that that's extremely important. I don't believe that many people in our city probably understand that there is a 50-year history here in the city with regard to what you're doing and actually what it is that you're teaching. I think the conversation that we had when I first come in, is you're doing so much here at the school, but you hear Newton Chinese Language School, and it's so much more beyond that. And I think that we should be collaborating between the language school and the public schools so that everybody does understand what it is that you're doing here and the value that you're providing to so many Newton families. And I know one of the questions that we had gotten in advance was with regard to mathematics and how that was working and how more Newton residents and students were taking advantage of some of the mathematics curriculum here. I think that's important. I think it's important for our system to understand what you're doing and vice versa, and work with you collaboratively on how we could make what you're doing here in the city feel that much more value, but have our system be proud that there's another avenue here for people to do that throughout the city of Newton. I just think that the collaboration is where I would hope I would be able to get leaders from both the public schools and from the language school at the table to understand how we can work with one another. I know that the rental cost has been somewhat of a conversation here. I'm just hoping we can get to the table to make sure that everyone feels that what they're doing here in the city feels valued and we can work together. Thank you.
I want to say thank you to you for making Newton your home. You could choose to be at another school in another community, and you've chosen to start here and stay here. It is in our self-interest for you to do so. Thank you. You are also attracting families here to Newton. I am so thrilled that now 18% of the students in the Newton Public Schools are Asian. Wow, isn't that great? We also have to make sure we're giving back to you, listening to you, talking to you, hearing you. So as mayor, I am absolutely committed to make sure there's somebody at City Hall whose part of their title is about inclusion and diversity and equity, so that you know you can always reach out to me, but there's also somebody else that is clearly identified for you to reach out to. On the rent, my goodness, we've got to keep talking to each other. You understand why we have to just make sure we cover our custodial costs. We want you to stay in this building and keep growing, and my goodness, maybe you'll be in a second building soon. You seem like you're bursting at the seams here. Isn't that great? But please know, I've been here many times. I was glad to be with you over at Regis when you were celebrating your new year, at City Hall for the multicultural festivals. I'm so thrilled that we're doing that collaboration. And thank you for giving back by doing things like Newton Serves. Let's keep talking to each other and look for even more partnerships and more ways to collaborate. But please know my door is open to you.
Hi, my name is David, and I'm a current junior in Newton South High School. So when I go to school, I always bike to school. And the problem is that there are a lot of student drivers, and there's not really very clear space to bike to school, which means that often I'm risking my life and I'm risking myself in order just to get to school on time. So I was wondering what the two candidates would do to ensure safety for your students for getting to school.
We want you to get to school safely, absolutely. So we've got a lot of work that happens to be true for you, David, just trying to get to school. We've got the same issues all over Newton. Sometimes it's heavy congestion on the main roads, and then it's speeding on the side roads, and it's not safe enough if you want to walk or to bike. So this is high on my priorities to make our transportation system work so that we have the funding. Have you also noticed what bad condition our roads and sidewalks are in? Do you know 49 miles of roads are in failed, very poor condition? So let's do a lot of work. Make it safe for drivers, but also for the bicyclists and the pedestrians. And we also have to keep working on buses so that if you don't have access to a car, there is a bus to get you over to north or south. Do you know that 40% of the traffic in the morning is related to kids and parents trying to get their kids to school? So it's in our self-interest to figure it out. So I'm dedicated to having the funding and making sure we lean into the design. There's a concept about complete streets and Vision Zero. It means building the streets and sidewalks to work for all of us and make sure that they're safe for all of us. I'm committed to that.
Okay, so
I'll be quick. No problem. David, we want to ensure that you want to continue to take your bike to school. I know being a high school junior, you reach that age, you can't wait to get your license, get that first car, drive to school as many kids like I used to do. You want to do that, but it's great to hear that you want to continue to bike to school and to make it safe. It sounds like right around Newton South. So we have a director of transportation that we've brought on fairly recently who bikes to work every day, who understands, the value of doing that, making it safe, making it environmentally friendly, to get more people out of their cars, but incentivizing that. If you are not making it safe, why would you want to continue to stay on your bike and drive to school? We want that to happen. So I want to know, how often are we meeting with you and others, and through our bicycle task force, or through the school, and working with the school to talk about, you mentioned the safety within the parking lot. I saw the question, and right around the school. Who's asking for your input? Who's asking on how to fix it? How do we get together to do that? And you build that plan near Newton South, and then we work to incorporate that in the city. Yes, our transportation strategy in the city talks about getting more people out of their cars and planning for all modes of transportation. That is something that I'm committed to. That plan is done. Each mayor will take a look at that and see how they may change that. But that is a plan, an example of a plan that is done. Now you need someone to implement it. And as I mentioned very early on, thoughtful, proactive planning with all stakeholders. David, you know what? You're a stakeholder here in the city. And you have something to say. And I'll be able to work with you as mayor and the school community and all of our school communities to talk about how we make it safer so you want to stay on your bike. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Qing Li, and I have been living in Newton in the past several years. So I have a quick but very broad question for both of you. So since both of you have been living in Newton for more than 20 years, what are the best change and the worst change happened in Newton, compare today's Newton with the Newton 20 years ago? Why? And what is your plan to improve or revert the worst change? Thank you.
So I think the question was the best change and the worst change over the last 20 years. I just trying to make sure I understood.
Yes, compare today, like right now, what happened in Newton, and also Newton 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The point of time that happened 20 years ago.
I'll
What is the best thing, improvement or some changes, the trend you think is you don't want to see the most?
I'll go back to, from 20 years ago. I think what we're seeing now is the development that's happening throughout the city from 20 years ago to now. We're seeing a real boom in development, and I think that we need to plan more proactively for that. There are many folks in our city that would like to keep Newton the way that it is. There are many more folks that would like to develop the city much more. We need to strike that balance. That's something that's been happening over a number of different years. So that's what I think are one of the biggest things. In terms of the other change that I see in the city over the last 20 years is coupled that with the affordability. I think that it's very, very expensive, as I mentioned here, to live in the city of Newton for someone like my sister, who grew up here in the city, raising her 2 children now in Framingham, and would love an opportunity to come back to Newton, to have her kids take advantage of city services in the schools, but it's very difficult. And I think that as we look over the course of, at least as the time that I'm mayor, in the next 4, 8, 12 years, to figure out ways in which we continue to make Newton more affordable for more people, like it was when I was growing up, but wanting to keep those generations of people here, I think, is another big challenge. So that's what I would say.
Worst changes. Traffic congestion and our street and transportation system. It's gotten worse in the last 20 years. Second is affordability. Who can live here is getting harder and harder and harder. If you look at the data, we're losing essentially the middle class here, and instead becoming a barbell community with either pockets of low income and upper and middle income. That's not the Newton that I moved to 25 years ago. I did not want that. So those are, I think, the 2 things that we have to work on. You asked also about what's really happened that's the best. I think I'm looking at what's the best. We continue to change and grow in terms of particularly the Asian community. We have not been successful with Black Americans, though. That we've been hovering at 2 or 3%, but we're getting diversity because of all of you coming here, and I'm grateful for that. With affordability and traffic, that's actually one of the reasons why I want to be mayor, because the city government does have a role with both. We can make a difference. We can build more affordable housing. We can fund it. And with traffic and congestion, actually, we just have to lean into this. We can keep advocating for public transit and improvements there, help people with that last mile, getting to public transit, making it safer for David so that he can walk and bike and get out of a vehicle, making the rest of the cars move faster. Thank you.
To the last question.
Yes, my name is Richard. I live in Oak Hill. I have 2 questions. So we have a brand new Newton.
Excuse me, I want to take the last question, please. Just one more question, please.
Okay, all right. I guess I will just ask the question really most of us very interested in is about Asians do celebrate Lunar calendar Chinese New Year. As you just said, there's 1/5 of students is Asians. So as the mayor, would you advocate at least designating Lunar calendar New Year as a school holidays here in Newton?
What a wonderful question. I don't have an answer to that, but tell you what, I'll work with you on it. How about that? Let's see.
Certainly. How's that for an answer?
So we do have like a great question and fantastic answers. Thank you for both candidates give out very informative and fantastic speech and answers. So now we are moving to the next part, which is our President's Volunteer Service Award ceremony. So we would like to invite both candidates and also the school committee members and the school committee candidates to join us to the ceremony to present the award to our students.